It's a great pleasure to welcome Duma Ngcobo, who's the Chief Operating Officer at Tracker. Duma, good to see you. How are you doing?
No, great, thank you. It's a nice sort of almost winter's morning.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's certainly getting quite nippy as we head towards winter. But it's great to see you, and you handle an amazing network of businesses at Tracker, and you guys have been doing some valuable work. I remember my days back in the radio. We were quite actively involved with you guys. We had your technology in our helicopter, and we used to help track down criminals. And I was always impressed by Tracker. You know, you guys have got this long history of incredible technology. And there's been a major rise in fleet vehicle crime recently. You know, we often hear of these stories every single day. What kind of data do you have to show the scale of this, and how bad is it? Is it a problem? Because I'm reading a lot about fleet vehicle crime in the press, so I don't know how serious it is at the moment.
Yeah, so I mean, I think you raise an important point. It certainly is a problem. You know, based on our data, in the fleet space, you sort of stand a 56% higher probability of being involved in a hijacking in the fleet space. So it really is a problem. Secondly, if you've seen what's happened with our rail network not being as strong, there's a lot more goods and services being transported by trucks all over our highways and byways. So it really is a material problem.
Wow, Duma, I mean, that's quite serious. I mean, 56% statistic, just listening to just gave me goosebumps. I mean, that's pretty harsh. And yeah, it makes sense when you look at the rail system. You look how much of our goods are being transported by road. Why do you believe this rise in fleet vehicle crime has occurred? I mean, so rapidly in such a short space of time. I guess it's been showing signs of increase over the years, but what do you attribute this to?
Yeah, I think COVID, oddly enough, was an inflection point in many ways because typically we used to see sort of large haulage all over the country before. And then with COVID, there's a lot more people working from home. So suddenly home deliveries, couriers, those kind of services has really sharpened the increase in sort of what we call business crime over and above just large fleets, as it were. So it was an inflection point where we saw a significant rise coming out of COVID. I think COVID pretty much gave us a false sense of hope. We're almost operating as sort of martial law type, where there was a policeman in every corner, travel was strongly curtailed, and so on. But emerging out of that, we've seen a very rapid increase in crime. And generally, criminals tend to be after the goods less than the truck. So they're after the bounty, be it high-end hi-fi systems or cell phones or anything of the like, is what they're essentially after.
Yeah, I was going to say that as you were talking there, I was just thinking about that, and absolutely, you're 100% right. You know, you look at the increase, and I think that over COVID, you know, people were delivering a lot of food items, you know, grocery items, and now that you're seeing, and even my behavior, and I'm sure yours as well, is that you're buying high value items online, right? And you're getting those delivered, and I guess that's those are obviously big targets for people. When you look at that stat and you look at where it's all going, what are the easiest ways that businesses can avoid becoming victims of fleet vehicle crime? Because the reality is, all businesses, all these crimes, you know, somebody's going to pay for them somewhere or another, and I'm afraid a lot of the costs can be passed on to the consumer. But what can businesses do to avoid becoming victims of these crimes?
I think the first thing to be said is let's understand where crime is actually happening. Off our car park, we see generally almost 60% being in Gauteng, another sort of 16% being in KZN, and a further sort of 13 to 14% being in the Western Cape. And that generally makes sense based on where economic activity is and based on the semigration patterns that we tend to see. So that makes sense to us in terms of where is it's happening. So train your drivers in terms of understanding where the hotspots are and where the routes, the safest routes are. That's the first part. And we've got teams that can enable our partners to be trained in terms of anti-hijacking and what to look out for. The second thing is there are quite nifty tools, as it were, that drivers can use. And these are things like the My Tracker Care Guard, which is an assistance that is available on the phone, where a driver, based on their location, it pinpoints where your location is. And we've got security teams all over the country along the major routes and in the major metros where you can get help. The third thing is something as simple as fuel can be a huge problem for drivers. So in other words, where do you stop? How far are you from your nearest stop? So your fuel dashboards become very handy in helping the driver navigate when he should stop, what time he should stop, based on where the risk most lies.
Wow, it's very interesting. And I'm just out of interest. Do you know how many more delivery e-commerce vehicles are on the roads in 2024 versus say pre-COVID in 2019? I imagine that's probably, and I'm just guessing here because you'll probably know better than me, but I'm guessing
Yeah.
it's more than doubled, right?
So I mean, already by 2024, the sort of freight and logistics industry is estimated at circa 430 billion rand. And
Wow.
based on the projections, it looks like it could go up by as much as 581 billion by the year 2029. So it really is a rapidly growing sort of industry and growing from a risk point of view as well. So you can see that
Yes,
appreciable
yes.
growth is
Now
quite
look,
significant.
no, it's massive. So look, you guys have been doing this, as I mentioned earlier, for many years. I think Tracker, if Tracker's been around how old? More than 2 decades? How long have you been around?
Yeah, almost three. So we were
Three.
started in 1998, and we're still going strong.
Yes. So that heritage that you've got a lot of IP. You understand what needs to happen. You've got the technology, and the technology has obviously evolved with time. And you've got such an interesting range of products. I mean, you've been tracking vehicles for a long time, so you guys know what to do. And I imagine that in 2024 there are a lot, more sophisticated products out there. I imagine that AI is probably playing a big role in helping you guys track. What kind of products does Tracker offer that supplement this? That you can help those businesses to deal with this kind of surge in crime.
Yeah, I think at a very basic level, you mentioned tracking, and that's sort of to borrow a word, our core, right? That's what we are known for in the industry. But today, you need a lot more tool sets to basically keep you and your business safe. One of them being a dash cam, but like you mentioned, it's a AI dash cam that's got built-in intelligence to monitor certain events. So these can be things like the driver falling asleep or dozing off, the driver not wearing a seatbelt, the driver being on his cell phone as opposed to concentrating on the road. All these sort of smaller risks add up to your fleet. We've seen videos on social media where the driver got distracted but for a moment, and the next thing he ends up in a ditch or, God forbid, causing worse harm. And so the AI dash cam plays a pivotal role in formulating and being a warning for the driver, because when these events are triggered, it sends them a warning while in transit. It can also put together a report that can send to the fleet company or the fleet manager, as it were, to help him improve the driver behavior of the various drivers within the fleet. I guess The third one that I can make mention of is the fuel dashboards. And the fuel dashboards really help optimize, route planning, help optimize when you should top up fuel. We've heard the war stories around diesel not being highly regulated. So the quality of fuel and where the best place to get diesel and that becomes super important and super vital in educating consumers and organizations as to how to optimize this. And that's just part of what's within the tracker range. We've also got tools like Empower that can help protect a fleet from a zone management point of view. So if you know your buses should be parked at this point overnight or over a weekend, were they to move, it can trigger certain events, which helps us proactively sort of manage the risks.
Yeah, the thing is that these guys have become very sophisticated, right? And you, a tracker, you've had to keep up. You've had to stay one step ahead of the criminals, what they're doing, and really eliminate any kind of threat that there might be, and all of those small things that you provide. I mean, just the fuel, for example, you can actually pick up and plan ahead logistically. If you're going to be doing trip A to B, you're going to use X amount of fuel because it's so many kilometers, and the nearest fuel point that's safe is that far away. So, I mean, those things are important things to think about when you're planning.
Yeah.
But it's not all of these things that are just the important ones, right, Duma? Because there are other criminal elements that infiltrate business operations that tracker can assist in addressing. I mean, we've just spoken about a couple of the obvious ones, but what are the other things that infiltrate business operations?
So I think we must recognize one thing. Gone are those days where the criminal would be, let's say, a squally looking oak, disheveled in dress, with a bunch of spanners and a screwdriver. We are dealing with somebody who wakes up every day and makes it his profession to try and break into cars, to try and steal vehicles, and to try and on-sell, because there's a very lucrative market both in country and beyond our borders. So part of what we bring to the table is the ability to help manage that risk, be it in lie detection, be it in the form of educating where the risk lies, be it in the form of training, how to spot syndicates. So obviously our artificial intelligence tools can help us partner with a company to provide those kind of services. We would co-design based on the need of that organization in order for them to understand how exactly we do this.
Okay, so you really work very, very closely with businesses to understand, what their biggest threats are, and close off any circle that might be a threat. And obviously the fuel is obviously a big one that you spoke about. The other thing as well is that at the end of the day, the drivers are at risk here. I mean, this is the key component of all of this. It's the cargo, it's the drivers. How can businesses protect their drivers, in these, very challenging times that we're living in at the moment?
So, I mentioned something called Car Guard for Business, and what it or Care Guard for Business rather. What this is basically while the driver's in transit on his cell phone, he is able to dispatch services if he feels unsafe. That is, at the press of a button, it then pinpoints where your location is, and based on the location, it can then dispatch security resources to be around the driver at any given time. I think that's the one key component that we always say to people, that your life comes first. Yes, the driver needs to protect the goods in transit, but if his life is at risk and there's imminent danger, the better thing to do is to request for assistance from armed resources who can deal with the situation effectively. That's the one part. The second part that we also assist with is just helping drivers understand from a route planning point of view where the risk lies. I think that is key. you often find these sort of unofficial truck stops, and all manner of things happen at those truck stops, be it the siphoning of fuel, be it the stealing of the spare tires, be it the removal of, say, the trailer, and all these tools. And there's different tools that Tracker can provide to help protect the trailer, different camera systems that we can use, which can send an automated message back to center. And so all these tools sort of come together in a holistic way to sort of provide the protection. So it's not just about the driver.
I mean, Duma, you guys have got a fantastic track record of recoveries. I mean, that speaks for itself. But, all of these tools that we've been talking about this morning that, businesses and some businesses watching this might not have this. And I don't know if there are any success stories or if it's something that, you can show financially that if you have got these tools that Tracker provides, that you mitigate risk quite substantially in your fleet. And, you reduce your risk by X percentage. I mean, have you guys done those numbers that a business that has and a business that doesn't have the tracker technology, how much better is a business, risk-wise and percentage-wise than a business that doesn't have anything installed?
Yeah, I think if you look at our roads and the amount of carnage that happens, they say that over 60% of the accidents happen after hours, and
Yes.
rarely it's related to people dozing off, especially on those long distance tracks. And what it comes down to is not about the guy opening the window to stay awake. It's not about only turning on the aircon so he doesn't fall asleep. It's also about intelligence tools, which significantly reduces those risks. So our AI dash cam, for example, can significantly reduce the risk of a driver getting into a collision, because the moment he starts dozing off, in other words, even before his eyes are closed, just based on his pupils and how the technology is centered, it can already send him a couple of signals to say, hey, something is going on here, stay awake. And it's a loud beep that actually happens in the vehicle. Anecdotally, I drove one of our vehicles for quite a period of time with a camera in it. And I never realized after 20 years of driving how my driving behavior had become. When overtaking, that I'd be too close. And because this beeping was going off all the time, I became conscious of my own driver behavior. And so it's corrected that quite significantly. So you can see a 60 to 70% reduction in potential fatalities just based on those corrections that happen. And obviously, there's also behavioral change that must occur. The technology can only do so much. The driver also has to change their behavior as well.
That is absolutely fascinating, and it makes so much sense. It's almost as if the technology is thinking ahead and almost predicting what can happen, and then mitigates against that by saying, the beeping sound, the fuel that you mentioned. So the technology is there to aid the driver to make the whole operation run a lot smoother and predict what may happen if you don't take action on certain things. And I think that's really brilliant, and speaks volumes, right, Duma?
Yeah, that's one part of it. But I think co-designing based on the need. So in our business, we have operational teams who, by the very nature of their work, drive at a different driver behavior than, say, someone who's a technician. So in a business sense, if you're a long-haul truck driver, you're very different from somebody who does courier services locally. And so part of the technology is designed and it's fit for purpose. So we would sit down with a partner and say, what are the things that are creating risk for you? Oh, last year we had 10 bumper bashes, or last year we had 25 potholes that were hit by the vehicles. And then on the basis of what their requirements are, we will then design which warnings should be most prevalent. Is it someone smoking in the car? Is it someone driving without a seatbelt? Is it a combination of what are the 4 or 5 relevant signals and what kind of reporting and insights do you want to see? And on the back of that, that's where the solution becomes magical.
Absolutely fascinating. Duma Ngcobo, the Chief Operating Officer at Tracker, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of What's Next. Really appreciate your time and sharing those fascinating insights. Always amazing to see what happens, behind the scenes that, most of us don't see. Duma, thank you very much for your time and wishing you well ahead of 2024.
Thank you so much, Aki, and best of luck to you.